Hi everyone, my name is Sophie Dunning and I am Miss Supranational England. This is my interview with the Pageant Project.
Hey everyone, it's Adrian from the Pageant Project with you. If you can hear me okay, I know Sophie can hear me okay. This is not my normal tech setup. I've had to move because my 5-year-old nephew is here. And if you know anything about 5-year-olds, you know you can't rely on them to be quiet. But my special guest for today is Sophie Marie Dunning, who is Miss Supranational England 2021. Sophie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. You come, I have to say, it's slightly unusual. You come highly recommended by Emma Jenkins, one Miss Universe GB, who said, you have to interview Sophie. So do you want to give a shout out to Emma, or should we start with, how do you know Emma?
So thank you, Emma. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So I actually know Emma because I competed in Miss Universe Great Britain with her back in 2019. So I was there when she was crowned, I was there when she won, and I followed her journey. And right now she's helping me prepare for Miss Supranational. So she's been incredible. She's given me so much advice, so many tips. And the very next Zoom call we have is going to be sort of tweaking styling and rehearsing some interview questions, actually. So I'm really excited for that.
It sounds exciting. You've got a coach there who's got some good pageant history, having won the two biggest titles in the UK. Sophie, we always start with the easy question. So would you like to tell our viewers how you got involved in the crazy world of pageantry to begin with?
Yes, sure. So my first pageant was Miss England, and that was back in 2016. I'd never even thought about a pageant before. I'm still not 100% sure where I first saw it, but I know it probably wasn't social media. It must have been a newspaper or something. But I saw the opportunity. I'd never really considered anything like this before. I'd never really done any public speaking other than giving seminars on skincare. So it was way out of my comfort zone. But I had a niece at the time. Well, I still do. But my sister had only had one child. So I had a little niece. She was around 1.5 at the time. And I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to show her that you can have confidence even if you've never experienced something before. Just push yourself out there. And as she grows up, I want her to see examples of strong women following their heart and doing whatever they want to. So I entered, got to the semi-finals, and it was an amazing blur. I can't really remember a lot of it now, but it was great. It was a lot of fun. And I remember getting home after that semi-final and just sitting there with a cup of tea in my dressing gown thinking, I want to do this again. And from there, I just entered a few more, and most recently, the Supra Star Search. So it kind of grew from a little seed in 2016.
Well, you say you entered it because of your wanting to basically set a good example for your niece. What was it that attracted you to keep on going? What were the parts that you enjoyed the most?
I think, I entered to sort of be a good role model, but actually I kind of needed one myself as well. And there's a lot of inspirational people in pageantry. The more that I learned about it, the more women that I got to know, even just online in the most recent years, you hear some incredible stories. And everybody has life experiences which you might not have had. You can take advice from so many people. So I've learned a lot and gained a lot from it myself, not just confidence and, public speaking, etc., but just also things which I would have never considered taking an interest in before. So it's really broadened a lot of my horizons, and it's pushed me to do things which I know I would never have even contemplated trying before. So it's done a lot for me in terms of personal growth. And I think seeing yourself bloom and develop and sort of get more confidence in new areas just makes you want to continue.
Is it possible for you to tell us who you'd be without pageantry if you hadn't taken that first pageant all those years ago?
I think my life probably would have taken a very different turn. I think pageantry gave me a lot of oomph, I suppose, to remove myself from situations and environments that were unhealthy for me. And I mean, I run Female and Fearless projects now. This is something which helps women to not only recognize and leave, but rebuild their lives after experiencing unhealthy and abusive relationships. And having experienced unhealthy circumstances myself, unhealthy relationships, work environments, I know that right now in who I am and everything that I've done in the past few years, I wouldn't necessarily, I may have found these skills in other areas if I'd have gone into sports, for example, because they all help. But I think having a real purpose and passion and something to zone in on has helped me to understand balance in life, and it's helped me set boundaries and know I am worth, my self-worth is there, I am worthy, and I don't deserve to be treated in certain ways. And I think pageantry has definitely helped me with that.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Female and Fearless projects? Because I've seen a little bit of it. But what was the impetus to start it, and what are you doing at the moment with it? What future plans do you have with it?
So Female and Fearless started in 2019. In January, I took the decision to swap out one of my workouts, and I just thought, I'm going to be proactive, I'm going to learn some self-defense. So I joined a local school, Colombo Combat Federation, and I started learning. I started opening my eyes to actually, what techniques and what muscle groups you need to train in order to give yourself the chance of survival should anything happen. And that kind of lit a fire in me, because it didn't only raise my confidence, but it also showed me how little sort of interest in a way there is to learning self-defense, especially here in England. And I wanted to raise that. I want to encourage more women to do so, because you never know when you might call upon it. So from learning the physical side to later in the year when I left an unhealthy relationship, I just wanted to merge the two together. So Female and Fearless started as a domestic abuse protection program. And I still do that today. I visit women's refuges and I listen to their stories, and we help to build a brighter future for them, and really break the cycle of abuse that they endure. And that's something I'm incredibly passionate about, and I'll never give up on. I want to help as many women as I can. But aside from the physical aspect of attending the refuges, I wanted a presence on social media which was non-invasive. And this is where the other projects began. So I released the Red Flag campaign. This is based on my own experience, actually. It's unhealthy warning signs of, I suppose when you think of somebody in an unhealthy relationship, you might not fully understand what small indicators early on can lead to a more serious consequence later down the line. And for me especially, all of these tiny things were building up. And it wasn't until I was, a year and a half into the relationship that I thought, this is really taking control of me and my life. Things, that I would dismiss on a daily basis were actually building up and slowly chipping away at not only my confidence and my self-esteem, but what I thought was expected of me and what I could and couldn't do, what I could and couldn't say. There was so much restriction in my life. I wanted to compile this into one project that people could click on and they could identify with. You can only sort of hold someone's hand to a certain extent, and it's really got to be their own penny to drop to think, I identify with this, and she's left, so can I. So there's a variety of projects that I have, which are just tools that can be visited at any time. It doesn't even have to be necessarily yourself enduring it. You could know somebody who you're concerned about and send them a link, show them when you're next with them. There's all of these different ways that we can get to people and reach them, not just physically visiting them. So it really grew from a physical training aspect to now something which I want it to be well known. I want it to be a presence in all different countries. I'm working on converting the projects into different languages. So there's a whole host of things going on, but it really is my main purpose.
It's so interesting. You mentioned both the self-defense aspect and then the domestic violence aspect, because I've advocated and worked in both. So it was probably only a month ago that I did a podcast episode where I said one of the best things I think every pageant girl could do is take up a combat sport, not so that they could beat this, the stuffing out of someone else, but even if they never have to use it, just the confidence that comes from knowing that you know how to handle yourself. Especially typically, obviously, a female will be smaller than a male. So knowing some fundamentals and just having the confidence, because I think very often there's still this stereotype. I don't know if you found the same, but that combat sport is not a feminine sport. I mean, I used to be a tennis coach, and some of the girls would be afraid to even sweat because at some point they've been told this idea that if you sweat, it's not attractive, it's not feminine. Have you found that to be at all true with your experience in self-defense, that it's still seen predominantly as a male thing, less so of a female thing?
For sure, it's certainly male dominated, and I think there's a lot of important elements behind the word self-defense. There's certain areas of the training which are, you have to divide it into social profiles. A woman like me at my age is going to have a very different risk category to, say, a male who's 18 and he's, out with the lads. He's more prone to different types of violence. He's a target for different reasons. And a lot of the message that I try to sort of get across to women, especially before they join and start learning, is it's not glamorous. Of course it's not. We're not training to look good and to do all of these Hollywood moves. I'm not here to encourage you to do a sequence of 12 steps to look great on Instagram. That's just not that's not the point.
It's
the point
so
is
funny though that you
survival.
say that, because I studied some martial arts where you learn what's called a kata to pass your first grade or your second grade. And literally the kata is like 12 moves pre-planned out. But the thing is, in a real life situation, you never know what the other person is going to do. It's almost like telling them, well, your attacker would stand here and let you punch them 3 times and then let you turn around and elbow them. And it's like, that is not how it happens in real life.
That's precisely true. Everything you've just said is just music to my ears, because that's what quite a lot of people don't acknowledge. When you go to self-defense training, if you go to, it's fantastic. Martial arts are brilliant for confidence, and you really do get the buzz. When you strike a pad and it connects properly, it feels great. And it's amazing once you can do a routine off by heart. That feeling's really, you've aced it. But actually, what we teach isn't all of this fancy stuff. It's responding to things in a reflexive way, because when you're in a situation, whether it's spontaneous or domestic abuse, whether there's been a build-up to it, your reflexes, your reflexes are going to be the same. So it's tweaking those reflexes in small ways to make them effective for your own self-protection. So, for example, if, say, you were approaching me in an intimidating way, my first response, as a lot of people's would be to just put my hands up, to say, whoa, what are you doing? Please back off. So it's not only encouraging reflexive movements and then tweaking them to make them effective, but it's also encouraging women and men to be vocal, to use your voice, because so often in situations we can freeze, and that's so normal. You don't always have to react. And if you do freeze, you should never feel any shame or guilt over that, because it's your body's natural response. It's fight or flight. And we encourage people to start using their voice. If something's happening, be vocal about it. It doesn't matter if you cause a scene, you're protecting yourself. If something's happening and you need to remove yourself from the situation, raise your voice, speak up, and then allow your reflexes to follow. So it's not, like I said, it's not about looking slick. It's not about delivering techniques perfectly each time. It is absolutely about your survival. It's about getting out of a situation in one piece, and covering things like knife crime when we host those seminars. Another thing that we say is, if you're involved in an incident and there's an edged weapon present, it's not about not getting, caught. It's about protecting the main areas so that you can survive after an attack. So sure, you might get sliced here, something can happen. It might nick you somewhere. But if you're protecting your main arteries, your vital organs, then you have a better chance of survival, even if you need hospital treatment. So it's such a broad spectrum that we cover. And I think those fundamental elements are often lost in translation when you see self-defense videos online, because it all looks so slick and glamorous, when the nitty-gritty, that's not the reality.
Sophie, just I think the headphones, the microphone for your headset is probably behind your sash, and it's just rustling up and down a little bit. Are you able to bring it out the front and just hold it away? Yeah, just so we don't. It's not too bad, but just you can just pull it down a little bit so it's not bunched up, because I know that you want to. You pageant girls always want to look the best. Those ones with a microphone on them, just for you guys watching. And if you have any questions, by the way, put them in the comments. I'll pass them on to Sophie. If you ever do an interview, try using, I'm not talking just to Sophie here, but the one with the headset here, it's very, the microphone here very often rustles with jewelry. Sometimes it's banged against earrings and things like that. So just a top tip, as I was telling Sophie, I've done almost more than 200 of these interviews now. So I picked up a thing or two. I remember very vividly being told the best way to survive a knife fight, and this was by someone who really knew how to fight with knives, and he said the best way to survive a knife fight is to not get in one, because just one wrong move, and that that's all it takes. I'm just curious, is there, when you're training men and women with self-defense, is there any aspect of it where it's like disengagement strategies? Because a woman's typically going to be physically smaller, and let's say that the attacker is physically bigger, stronger, and let's say they're drunk as well, in which case they have no control, they're less likely to feel pain. Is there some part of it which is don't get into the fight in the first place and literally just run away?
That's the main part of it. That's the number one. That's the first step. So before we even, discuss going into physical protection, the best way to deal with conflict is to not be in it in the first place, as you say. And it's only when, if a fight ever does happen, if you're in it longer than 5 seconds, you shouldn't be in the fight. You shouldn't have to go on. You're going to get tired. Things are going to happen. So if you can, avoidance is the best tool that anybody has in dealing with conflict. And that's not just in the self-defense world. That's on the internet. There's so many different ways that people can attack you these days. And social media is good and bad. If something's happening to you, which they don't have to be here, present, threatening you. If something's happening online, don't interact, don't write back. The block tool is an amazing feature on every social media platform, and you will avoid so much conflict, so much threatening behavior if you use it. So I encourage people, not only in the physical world, but in the online social media world as well, always try to avoid, never try to fight head on, because fire with fire doesn't get you anywhere. So if it comes to it, this is where the techniques come in. But actually, the very best, as you said, the very best thing that you can do is avoid. And that's something which, especially in today's world, when something happens, it can escalate so quickly. It's all on camera. There's so many things going on. In a moment, you're not going to have time to compute what's happening, and lashing out could get you in a far worse position if you just said, whoa, I don't want to be involved. So there's a lot of different reasons to avoid conflict, and they will all benefit you more in the long run. Like I was saying earlier, with social profiles, for myself specifically, I am at risk of somebody concealing a weapon to say, get in the car, or I will use this. And it's those techniques, that is difficult to avoid, but this is where we encourage other women to speak up, use their voice. If you're in a crowded area, someone's concealing a weapon and approaching you, say, whoa, what are you doing with that knife? Get your voice heard, draw attention, because that's what they don't want. If they were intent on using that weapon, they would have it out and proud. They're concealing it because they don't want anybody to know it's there.
Sophie, the microphone's just gone back behind your sash
again. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's not that bad. I just don't want you to be listening back to the interview and keep hearing the rustling sound and saying, why didn't Adrian tell me? look, the block button or the block feature, as you mentioned, is something that I have used more often in 2020 than any other year. Let's just leave it at that. But as I mentioned to you before, also, I have worked with women who've been in domestic violence situations. And this is one area where, because I don't know if you ever had this, but sometimes you get men saying, well, it happens to men too. And I understand that domestic violence does definitely happen to men, but the consequences of it normally are less severe because normally, as I've said, the male is bigger physically and can defend himself even if he's not trained. I've had, I did a book where I interviewed 10 women. A few of them had been through domestic violence situations, one in South Africa, to give you an idea. It was so bad, her partner drew a gun at her head and fired it and just happened to miss. So he fired the bullet and it went past her ear. And I was interviewing this woman live on camera, and she said that was a moment she thought she had died. There was another woman who had been beaten to a pulp, unconscious, lying in a pool of her own blood. And then when she came to, she jumped off, I think it was her second floor balcony to escape him. Didn't get her handbag or anything. And the only reason she escaped, because he jumped after her, was she jumped down and broke her wrist. He jumped down and broke his leg. That's why he wasn't able to chase after her. But with all those stories, the disengagement from that relationship, that's always been the most difficult part for these women. It's been recognizing the fact in the first place, for example, that the relationship is not normal. And I think maybe we should just dig into that a little bit, because the women that I've interviewed, they're incredibly smart. And yet they don't realize that there's something inherently wrong in that relationship. Like the guy saying, I don't want you to go and see this person, or the guy taking control of all your finances. So you talked about red flags. In your experience, what are some of those little red flags that women should be on the lookout for that might not mean something by themselves, but when they add up consistently over time, you should at least be going to have a conversation with someone about it?
So I think touching on what you've just said, with these women who are affected, especially in full-blown violence, physical violence, these are smart women. It's such a myth that anybody who is targeted is a weak woman, because that's just not true. And when you are engulfed with love, when you have such a high opinion of somebody, you don't believe that somebody would want to manipulate or hurt you. And it's a very difficult balance to comprehend, that somebody who says they love you so much is doing you so much harm. And it's a very hard reality and pill to swallow. You don't want to believe that the person that you're with, the person you've invested your life in, is a monster, you know, that they're doing these things to you. They want to hurt you. They want to isolate you. There's so many different aspects of domestic violence. It's not just physical, it's manipulation, and it slowly seeps in. It doesn't all happen like, you know, in one go. It's not this entourage of things which suddenly overwhelm you. It's gradual. And I mean, as far as my situation, it was never violent. It was very emotional. And small things which I've put into the Red Flag Project are just small characteristics, traits, and actions that somebody can do which affect you in a very negative way. So to give you just one example, I'll share the link below the live on Facebook so people can have a look at all of them. But just as an example, so planning things with my mum, if I'd planned something and I hadn't, you know, mentioned, I'd get met with a very cold, frosty reception. I'd be ignored, and I'd be told that, so you're not going to do anything with me this weekend. And so I'd cancel with my mum to then spend time. And things like this, they seep in over time. You know, you probably don't think twice about it in the moment, because for me especially, I thought, yeah, I didn't even consider asking you, I'm sorry. You know, you put the blame on yourself. And it's that method of self-blame, self-doubt, and making you feel like you're the person who should be acting in a certain way to please them. That's what builds up, and that's what can get so severe. So when we look at the mental strength of women, we can give them all of the advice in the world, but they need to know themselves. It's a gut feeling. They need to read something which relates to them. And this is where useful content online comes in. So it's not just the red flag campaign that I've released. I've released smear campaigns because once you've left, a perpetrator, what they can do is try to still have some control over your life. And they can try, once they can't control you anymore, they can try to control how others perceive you.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, men are affected also, but they're affected in, I believe, a somewhat different way. It's not always physical. It can be using other things as a weapon, such as public perception, children. There's so many different areas that can be controlled about a man's life without using violence. And this is where smear campaigns comes in. So there's a whole array of different tips and advice that are present online for people to access. And it's not until they can relate to something and put themselves in a situation which the words speak true of, that they can then start to realize, I need to speak to someone, I need to do something about this. There's so many amazing resources to call upon, especially here in England. Refuge is one of my favorites. There's also so many different, if you search something, a lot of people can't because they're controlled, their internet use is controlled. But if you suspect anything is wrong in anybody's life, if you have a friend, if it's your daughter, even if it's your mother, if your mother's in a new relationship and you can see something happening, research it, know what the safest method to do is. One thing which I saw last year, as I was saying, the good and bad of social media, and people have such good intentions sometimes. But one thing that I saw that really worried me was there was a post going around on Facebook, which was a copy and paste. And it said, if you are in an abusive relationship and you need help, message me saying you want to buy my blusher and I will call the police. And this would be so, so dangerous. You don't know, as just a stranger on Facebook, what to do professionally to help that woman. If you call the police go around, there's nothing wrong. She could get beaten that night. There's so many different things that can be damaging. So that's why good advice is so important.
It's from my time volunteering here at Lifeline, I mean, talking about good resources, one of the big resources we have here is Lifeline, which is a 24-hour free phone line service, and now I believe a chat service, an internet chat service as well. To give you an idea, the power of using incognito browsing, so your partner doesn't know what sites you've been looking up, and then some of these sites that you can look up literally have a giant red button at the top, and as soon as you hit it, the site closes itself down so that your partner can't, because sometimes they can just appear behind you and they want to see what you're doing, you can just close it. And then a lot of the helplines have numbers such that it never shows up on your phone account. So if they're checking your phone billing account, they can't see that you've been talking to anyone. Just the fact that resources like that are needed, and again, they're predominantly used by women, not by men. As you said, men, it's different. And I've been subject to smear campaign. I mean, I had to look up what gaslighting was. I never knew what gaslighting was. And then when I found out what the term was, it's like, oh, that's what's been happening to me. But in terms of domestic violence, there is a lot of, I mean, it boggles my mind as a man. It boggled my mind. It still does, that resources like that were needed for women, where you have a giant red button at the top so that you can close it so that the person behind you can't watch. Are there resources like that over in England as well?
There's so many resources, and this is why it's so important to share those and not offer some random, article that your friend's auntie, sister's son has shared, on Facebook. I really encourage everybody, and this doesn't just go for my advocacy in. I'm sorry.
Oh, you've turned sideways. There you are.
Am I back?
Yep.
This doesn't just go for my advocacy. This goes for anything that you're sharing content about. Just do your research, before you hit the share button and before you spread something online. do the research behind it and know it's a good decision, because you could be affecting somebody else's life. And knowing which resources to share. I'm so sorry, am I sideways again?
No, you're good now. You were sideways before. Now you're good now.
Oh, good. Okay. But knowing the background and the history and the facts behind what you're sharing online is the best way to eliminate all of these red herrings, I suppose, that we can call them. Because if you share bad information, you don't know how many times that's going to be shared, who's going to see that, and what effect that's going to have on somebody who actually really needs help. So do the research behind the post, because there are some great resources online, and I include references, everything like that in all of my projects so people know where it's
That's
from.
important.
It is.
Yeah.
And, real numbers, real websites, real chats, and, real links to pages which are fully realized and researched.
I don't know that it's the same in England. I would assume it is, but the research here in Australia showed that the time that a woman is most likely to be killed in terms of domestic violent relationship is actually when she leaves. That is the most dangerous time. So speaking to your point about just randomly sharing advice, as well-meaning as it is, and obviously I'm assuming it's well-meaning because you don't want anyone, and I don't want anyone to be in a domestically violent relationship or an unhappy relationship, male or female. But I think people have to understand that leaving is not a simple process. Otherwise, they would do it. And from the women that I interviewed, one of them very clearly said she still loved him. And I think that will haunt me for the rest of my days. I mean, he was abusive, properly abusive. And she didn't want to go to the police because that would be bad for him, not for her, but for him. But also she still loved him, which made it exceedingly complicated. How do you go to the police to tell them that the person that you love is abusing you? So it's an incredibly emotionally complex issue.
Of course, yes. And it's something which isn't uncommon. We are all humans, we all have emotions, and we can never fully understand or realize what somebody else has been through, what their experiences with this person are, the extent of the manipulation that's gone into the relationship and for how long, and the vulnerability that they had in their life when they met this person. This person could have acted as their savior. This person could have put on a fake mask for a while and acted as if they were going to make everything okay. And they're constantly in debt to that person for doing so. There's so many different levels of psychology which go into this. So the best thing that we can do is to just support people. And if somebody doesn't want to press charges, as much as we'd like them to, as much as we know that they deserve justice, and as much as we know that they deserve to have a life of peace and where they don't have to constantly look over their shoulder, as much as we want that for somebody else, we can't make that happen. It has to all be from their own actions. And that's where I always say we can hold somebody's hand. You can give them all the guidance, advice, training that you want, but we never know what they're feeling, what their vulnerabilities are, and what experiences they've had. So we can't blame a woman. I've seen posts on Facebook that say, why didn't she just leave? We can't say things like that, because what if it was you? What if it was your father who was abusive? Would you really have such a nonchalant attitude to going to the police? So there's so many different levels that aren't always taken into consideration. And in turn, this makes more women afraid to speak out, because they're like, well, this is the public perception.
How do you bring up such a complicated and emotionally charged issue in the world of pageantry? I'm just curious, because a lot of people will talk about mental health or heart disease or exercising on a regular basis. And it's pretty, I don't want to say it's lighthearted, but I think a lot of people are aware about it and the importance of it. Domestic violence is one of those, I mean, the term trigger warning is, I think, overused, but I think in this case it's very accurate. How have you been attempting to start the conversation in the pageant world? Because sometimes the pageant world is guilty of 30-second snippets or, the highlight reel on Instagram where everything needs to look happy and perfect all the time. So how have you been trying to start the conversation in terms of domestic violence or the red flag and all these other things that you've been doing?
The key for me is natural organic growth. I believe it's not something to brag about. It's not a
Mm,
platform that I want to be applauded for. That's not the purpose. I see Miss Supranational as an opportunity to reach women, not necessarily to sort of promote for my own gain. This is
yeah.
a way to use a platform which is right in front of me to slowly and surely encourage more women to not only be proactive if they've perhaps never experienced an unhealthy relationship or they've never experienced spontaneous violence, not only as sort of the prompt to say, yeah, I'm going to learn some self-defense, but also to non-invasively reach people. And it's only through being a relatable figure that you can really start to
Mm,
touch people. And that's something that I really want to do. I want to be able to be that person somebody can look at and think, I can access what she's worked on. It's there if I want to see it. And I can listen to her words, know that she's been in similar shoes to me. She has experience working with others who are in my situation. There is something I can do to get out of this, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. Not to jump on, a bandwagon of it.
mm,
Mental health is such a big part of domestic violence, and
mm.
not to jump on a bandwagon of mental health, but that's all involved. There's so many different facets of the subject. I never want to force it into people's lives. It's here when they're ready to hear it and when they're comfortable enough and when they're in a safe, secure position to be able to then take the next step. And so being here, being a presence, having just an association with a positive outcome, I think
Mm.
might be enough for just one woman to leave and to think my future's a lot brighter than this.
Supranational is coming up in a couple of months. Um, let's say if you were fortunate enough to win, what would be the ideal outcome for yourself in terms of all the things that we've been talking about? Let's say you were to win the title. How would winning the title dovetail into what you're doing? What sort of would be the next step? I guess with or without the title, what are your next steps? Because obviously what you're talking about, I feel, is extraordinarily important. So what's the 1 year, 2 year, 5 year plan for yourself?
So I've recently released, it was after speaking to Emma actually, on one of our previous Zoom calls, and she said, you, is there something short and sharp that you can advise people and that can be
Mm,
spread? And yes, there is. So I made the CAT system. So it's
mm,
CAT. And it's just a simple first step into encouraging women to think about and prioritize their safety outside the home, when they're traveling, when they're running. There's just small life tweaks that you can make to give yourself that extra layer of security. So, C is communication. It's encouraging everyone when they're taking public transport, if it's a taxi, if it's a bus, text the number or the registration number to your mum, to your friends, let them know where it's heading. That first step,
mm,
if God forbid anything was to happen, they know where you were heading, they know which bus you were on. So that's an incredibly important one. Um, it's also something which I think it only takes 5 seconds to do. So
yeah,
it's just a simple action which down the line, it might be able to help an investigation, the police, your whereabouts, something which only takes 5 seconds of your 24-hour day. So that's
yeah,
incredibly important. Um, to be fair, when I was making this cat system, there were so many things I could have included, but to
yeah,
simplify it down to the bones was really difficult. But to start into Miss Supranational, it has to be relatable, it has to be
yeah.
there, it has to be obvious, and it has to be something which anybody in any country can follow. So
Mm,
A is always alert. So this is when you're out running, just take your headphones out. Your ears are so incredibly useful. You can hear something which you
mm,
might not see. You can hear footsteps coming behind you. You can draw your attention to things that your eyes cannot. So why disrupt that? Why take one of your senses away? So stay alert. And
mhm,
T is, as I was saying before, use your voice, take action. If you're in a situation, T is take action. If you're on a train and somebody's a little too close to you, perhaps they're pushing into you, in an intimidating way, or if they're
Yeah.
just invading your personal space, you don't have to put up with that. Take action, move your body, use your voice, say, excuse me, I'm going to move over here. It doesn't have to be aggressive, but don't be afraid to use what you have to move, and don't be afraid of causing a scene. Take action, get out of it. So those 3 steps, CAT, are just the very first step in communicating with people. And Miss Supranational is a platform which allows me to communicate with women all over the world, and men and children. So
Yeah.
this is just the very first in what I hope to be a ripple effect. Once they've seen Cat, they can practice Cat. Once they've seen that, they can think, okay, what else does she do? Oh, she does the red flag. Let's have a look at
Yeah.
this. And that's sort of the cycle, the rollout that I want to do. And pageants sort of offer me that reach that I so badly want for other people to see and practice this.
One of the obviously a lot of pageant girls do modeling as well. And one of the big ones that I always tell young girls is that if you ever go to meet someone, never go by yourself. Never, ever, ever. I mean, communicate absolutely, but never go anywhere by yourself. It's just too risky. You don't know who's out there, what they want to do. So, and I love the fact that you've broken it down into 3. I mean, I completely sympathize with, you've probably got a billion things that you want to say, but people won't remember the billion things. So you kind of need to break it into the little sound bite or the thing that can fit into one post. I still remember, even though I wrote my book over 4 years ago, I had to break down mental health into something similar to yourself. So I came up with an acronym similarly to yourself. I had 4 letters. I don't know if you had ADSL internet or if you remember ADSL internet, but it was sort of the internet before broadband and after dial-up, the horrible ancient dial-up. So ADSL. And I still remember, I mean, it's a silly story, but I still remember it was accept you have a problem. D, decide you're going to do something about it. S was to seek help, seek professional advice. And L was to love yourself throughout the process. And, I can't remember the billion things that I wanted to say, but I can remember those 4 things. So with CAT, I love that. I also love cats. So I think
it's a win-win.
Are you a cat person or are you a dog person or you're both? You're neither?
I'm an animal person. I adore animals. I have so my family has a dog called Bella, and she's a little Yorkshire Terrier. I'm obsessed with her. Everything that I see, I'll be like, Bella would love that. Or if it could be something really random. I could see, I don't know, like a tree, and I'm like, that looks a little bit like Bella. And everybody's like, she's a dog, but she's such a big part of my life. I see her everywhere. So I'm a dog lover, but animals, any animal, I love.
Does Bella have an Instagram account? I'm almost afraid to ask.
No, she hasn't. She hasn't got that. She used to make a frequent appearance on mine, but since lockdown, because she lives with my mom and dad, it was difficult. It was a hard year without her. She's probably the one I miss most. But no, I've had her stay, since restrictions eased a few times. So it's been nice to have her back in my life, but she's not on social media just yet.
I think a lot of people, a friend of mine told me that people who had pets during lockdown was a lot easier. And I certainly I completely agree with that because I have my cat. And, during lockdown, I have spoken to him way, way too much. I have full blown before. And Emma Jenkins said that she talked to her. Was it her dog? I think it was her dog. She has a dog, right? It's a dog or cat? I can't remember. A little dog. And when I interviewed her, she actually demonstrated her voice as to how she talks to her dog. And she has a whole weird voice and everything. I've had full blown therapeutic conversations with my cat. So I can certainly sympathize with missing your pet. Did you know that Emma, speaking of self-defense, she was a little tipsy one night, and her and her best friend, Emma told her friend, I bet I could take you in a fight. And they had a wrestle. And this is whilst Emma was in the lead up to Miss Universe. And Emma pinned her friend repeatedly. And to this day, still thinks she broke one of her ribs. One of her friend's ribs.
Oh my God. Emma, if you're listening, just don't do that. Don't do that again.
I felt horrible for her friend. She said it was her proudest moment ever, you know, because her friend is really into sports and that. And I said, you were in the lead up to Miss Universe GB. She probably just felt bad for you and didn't want to break you because you're about to step on stage in the biggest pageant in the world.
Emma maybe you need a rematch then, really?
Well, I mean, people watch all sorts of fights these days. So they just had the was it the Mayweather and Logan Paul? So, you know, maybe we can get a pay-per-view happening there.
Yeah, get it streamed. Yeah, there we go.
That would be an interesting thing to be televising. Sophie, outside of the amazing work that you're doing, the advocacy and pageant world, I mean, do you have time for anything else? I like to ask people about their career, study, hobbies. Very often with pageantry, you don't have time for anything else. But what keeps you busy outside of the pageant world?
So I work 12-hour shifts in transport. And this is something I've only been doing for the past nearly 7 months now. So Female and Fearless was my full-time occupation until until Halloween, actually. It was Halloween when my very last project ended. I still attend women's refuges on my days off and do all of the online virtual work, Zoom calls, etc. But to keep them alive, I took up a transport role. So I do that. It's very hard work. But aside from that, I read a lot. I love reading. It's my downtime. I could just escape to my own little world. And it's just something, once I pick up a book, it could be, 10 p.m. I'm thinking, I'll just do a couple of pages, I just get another chapter done. And then I look back and it's midnight and I'm like, oh God. So I love to read, but pageantry, especially from the Supra Star Search. So I'm not sure how much sort of you followed the search, but it was an opportunity.
I looked back at it when I was looking you up. Before that, I didn't know about it. So I know a little bit about it, but not a whole lot.
So with that search, it was essentially an opportunity for every single country without a national franchise to enter to try and win a place for your own country. And it was, because I was doing everything myself, that took up a lot of time. So whenever I wasn't at work, I was thinking about the Supra Star Search, what I could do, what the next challenge was. And it was a huge snowball. There was so much to do. And since then, prepping for the pageant, it does take a lot of time because I don't have a team or, I don't have a director and things. So I'm even making my own national costume. So that's taking up a lot of time right now. It's enjoyable, but it's a lot of work.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so I did textiles at school, so I do have basic sewing knowledge. We're just gonna see. We're gonna see how it goes, but pray for me.
I think I would rather start a Kickstarter or a fundraiser for you than pray for you. I think that might be more useful. You decided to make your own national, oh God, like out of all the ones I mean, I don't have any textile skills whatsoever. So me sewing anything is not going to go well. But how is it going? Is it done?
It's not done, but we have a skeleton for it. It's just something that I'm going to have to, I have all the plans for. I've sourced all the materials. It's just the execution now. But I think the main problem really is because Supranational isn't that well known in England. And it's something which I'm trying to slowly build the profile of. I'm trying to get my name, my face out there so that the next Miss Supranational England has more support, a bigger sort of family around her to help. But I think, sourcing all of the outfits, sourcing the evening gown, the national costume, and then fitting everything else which I need to take with me in. It's a huge financial cost. And so I'm trying to do things as economically as possible and try to limit sort of the impact on the environment at the same time, because it benefits my purse, it benefits the world. It's something that's so easily hand in hand there. So that's become a big focus, trying to source outfits, pieces which can mix and match. It's 3 weeks that I'm going to be there for, so
Oh,
I want to make
wow.
sure that I'm not
Jeez.
overpacking. Yeah. So then the national costume, it was just getting it down on paper what my idea was, sourcing the materials, which is done, and my mum's going to help me where she can, which is great. But I'm going to be dropping a few things on my Instagram as we construct it to keep everyone in the know, because I feel like we're all on this journey. It's not just me.
How many hours roughly have gone into the national costume up until now, and how many more hours do you think there are roughly to go? I'm afraid to ask this.
I'm afraid to think about it.
Well, I'm making you
um,
think about it now.
I think there's probably been, gosh, I'd say about 20 hours so far, which
Okay.
doesn't sound like a great deal, but fitting it in around everything else it's definitely been mentally quite challenging.
Mm.
And to go, I think I'm just gonna have to tally as I go.
Oh dear.
I'll
I
give
mean,
you a weekly update.
you just keep a counter, just once a week, post a number, and I know
Yeah,
exactly what you mean. You said you work 12-hour shifts. I don't care how much you enjoy the transport job. Like coming back after a 12-hour shift, and I'm in a similar situation as in taking on a job simply to fund my passions, because sometimes the passion is what you live for, but it doesn't necessarily reward you financially to the degree that would actually allow you to eat or pay
yeah.
rent. So sometimes you need to take a job on the side to help pay for that. It must be exhausting though, Sophie. You have a 12-hour shift and then to come back, not to be able to switch off, but no, you have to now go into pageant mode.
Um, I think, when I look at my downtime, I consider pageantry, especially a lot of the planning, as downtime
Mm,
because I do enjoy it. The stressful part of the Star Search was actually just trying to figure out what to post on social media because I've never been one to really stage things before. Because I haven't really had much opportunity during the search to go out and take beautiful pictures, which a lot of other
yeah,
countries could. I
yeah.
didn't really think about sort of how to present the home and things like that. And having looked back on everything I posted during that time and looking at what I'm posting now, I actually quite enjoy figuring out how to get messages across. And so for
Mm,
me, any break from work doesn't, especially involving pageantry, because it's so exciting, it doesn't feel like extra work, if that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
My work is something I leave there. I don't bring it home with me anymore. So as soon as I clock out, I love thinking about, which dress would look great onto stage, or, I'm doing little twirls everywhere. There's always something that I'm doing revolving around pageants, and it's become such a big part of my life that it doesn't feel hard work anymore.
I've never heard of anyone twirling in the transport industry. That is a first.
Hopefully we can get more doing it because it does brighten the day.
I can imagine. I mean, you always hear about pageant girls. You're a pageant girl when you just randomly start doing a strut or a catwalk for no reason whatsoever. I know so many people, lawyers, or they're going to the supermarket and they just decide to bust out a pageant walk. That's when you
Yeah,
know that you've caught the bug
I'm
and
fully
you've
immersed.
yeah, you're a terminal case. You're a hopeless case. There's no hope for you.
So,
Now, Nadia King we addressed this before, but who is a director of Supra UK? What support do you have? So you don't have a director, if I'm correct. You're doing it all on your own.
yes.
Do you have, I mean, obviously Emma is supporting you. Do you have any like sort of official support figures or sponsors along on the journey?
No, it's not for want of trying. I've reached out to a lot of people, a lot of businesses, but I think because it's not too well known, it's been
Mm,
difficult to sort of encourage people to see the opportunity in it. and sort of rally a little bit more support. So that's been probably the hardest thing, is just
Yeah.
the amount of time spending sending emails and calls and things like that with to no avail. But there are a few sections which I'm still looking for help for. So one of them is they want us to promote a British designer, which is a fantastic opportunity for someone. And it's just any outfit that somebody's made, to tell the story about why they've made it, what's inspired them, and then for me to have photographs in it and wear it whilst I'm there. So there's so much opportunity, but it's just I've been trying to email, call lots of different companies, designers, and it's just
Yeah.
not getting too far in that area. So that's definitely been a struggle.
I can understand that. And to be fair to the businesses after 2020, a lot of them are probably just thankful to even exist, because
Of
2020,
course.
some of the people I've been interviewing, two of them, both very big apps, the Queenly app over in America and the Girls Trade app here over in Australia, which do fashion and they rent out and buy secondhand fashion. They all launched right before COVID hit, which was not the best time to launch any business, let alone a business predicated on fashion. But Sophie, just I always wrap up interviews with the same 10 questions. But in terms of shout outs, I mean, you're doing this solo, but anyone you want to give a shout out to for supporting you along your journey, pageant, and just life in general?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start where the heart is, and that's with my mum and dad. They've been incredible. As you know, they crowned me last weekend,
Mm.
and it was such a proud moment for them. And it was for me. It was so nice to have my dad put the sash on. He practiced and practiced because he wanted to get it right, which was
When
just
you
so
say your
nice.
dad put the sash on, you mean the dad putting the sash on you? He didn't put it on himself.
Well, he tried the crown on. It looked pretty damn good.
Dear me.
But yeah, no, he put it on me. He practiced to make sure he was doing it the best he could for me, which is really, it just warmed my heart to know that he cared so much to get it right.
Mm.
And my mum, she's always been my biggest fan. You know, she always is. And anything that I do, she just throws her full support behind. She's incredible. But also, I mean, looking back at who's supported me, not just during Supranational, but before then, Ellie Sanderson is somebody who I used to work for. I model for her on occasion in bridal modeling now. And she's just been so supportive. I've learned so much from her, and she's always so encouraging. She has so much sass and confidence that she just puts on me. She just throws it all on me like glitter, and I sort of lap it up. So she's been amazing. I've had a lot of love from different fans. A lot of the Indonesian fans have been incredible. The Filipino fans have been amazing. And just seeing some little words of encouragement, or just saying, keep pushing, keep going, we can see you blooming, things like that is just so nice, because not that you need the recognition, but it's nice to know you're reaching people. And that's been really lovely. But also, when I look at the Supra Star Search opportunity, Andre Slay created that. And I can't
Mm.
thank him enough for giving not just myself, but all of these women and men the opportunity to do something bigger than themselves, you know, to get somewhere which they might not have the opportunity to do without. So
Mm.
I really just want to thank him, and say, you know, it's been an incredible ride so far, and I'm hoping that I stay on track in time for the final. And finally, Emma, you know, she's been really supportive, and she's helped me a lot. We've got another Zoom call, and I'm really hoping to get to Wales to practice some of my catwalk with her, because that would be amazing.
What's the status of lockdown for you guys at the moment? It's eased up a lot, hasn't it?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's hopefully going to continue easing, but we're yet to find out if that is fully the case. But
Okay.
we can meet up with our families again. You know, we can meet inside now. So all of the restaurants and pubs are now open. Um, the weather's getting nicer, so naturally more people are coming out, and it's nice to
Hmm.
have somewhere to go which you don't feel like I mean, I've got such a big family. My sister and her husband have four children, and
Oh, wow.
there's my parents. So the group of us together is way over six, and it's just nice to be able to meet socially distance. And even now, looking back, I don't know how I went so long without it. It was really tough. But yes, things are easing, things are getting a lot better. So fingers crossed with the vaccine rollout,
Okay.
we can continue.
Glad to hear it. Okay. I know you've watched a couple of my interviews. Have you seen the final 10 questions?
I I I don't know actually. I'm not sure if I've seen them or not.
Obviously, if you have, you don't remember them, so it's great. So these questions, the answers won't be rehearsed at all. Um, I've done these 10 questions every single interview, except actually the last one. The last one, I ran out of time. That was the first interview I've done where I haven't finished with the same 10 questions. So here they are. This is as pageant-esque as we're going to get. It's not a speed round, Sophie, so you don't have to answer as quickly as is humanly possible. Having said that, if you're competitive and you want to, I'm not going to stop you. So question 1, what is your favorite word?
I think my favorite word is probably friend. And the reason I say friend is it is such a strong association in my mind with support. And that's something which I think a friend can give, not just support, encouragement. They're a symbol of love, they're a symbol of reliability. And I think to have one word that embodies so much is important. And to have friends in your life is so important. So I'd say friend.
What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite. I think negativity. Negativity in itself is a negative word, but I think the associations with it, it can, it breeds itself, doesn't it? And I think when you look at a situation, you can see it glass half full or glass half empty. And when you look at it glass half empty, it's just going to feed your mind in a negative way. So negativity.
Question 3, in life, what gets you excited or what turns you on?
I'd say freedom. I think freedom is such a fantastic thing, and we appreciate it now more than ever with the pandemic. But I think freedom relates to so many different topics, and it can relate to people in different ways, not only with my female and fearless work, but also in what I do in my spare time. I love freedom.
What turns you off?
The opposite, I'd say repression. I think it's, something which can affect people mentally, physically, and a lot of bad things can come as a result, not only in terms of running a country, for example, but in your own life. If you suppress something, then it's going to manifest in itself, and you're going to have a negative experience because of it.
Question 5, what sound or noise do you love?
So my family dog, Bella, when I see her, she does this little whimper because she's so excited she can't contain herself, and it melts my heart.
Would you like to show us what the whimper sounds like?
I don't think I'd do her justice. I think she'd be pretty embarrassed if I was to try. I'd get a bad reception when I see her.
Fair enough. What sound or noise do you hate?
My alarm, it's horrible. And I know I should change the tone, but I feel like I don't want another negative tone in my life.
Which tone do you have? Is it a
So
song or just an alarm
no,
tone?
no, it's just a very mundane beep. Yeah. Just a very mundane low beep, and it's just I don't live for it.
Most people probably don't. Question 7. If you could have one superpower, what would you pick and why?
I'd go back in time. I think that's a superpower that you could have endless possibilities from, not necessarily to change anything, but just to observe and sort of be more rounded in my experiences and views on things, not just personally affecting me, but in other places too.
Mm-hmm. Question 8. What job or occupation other than your own would you most like to attempt?
Oh, to attempt. I'd love to be a pilot. I think that would be cool because you could just, especially, I'm watching, this is going to sound very, very strange, but over the past 2 weeks, I've started watching the X-Files. Do you know the X-Files?
You started watching that series is like 20 years old, isn't it? And you only just started watching it now.
Yeah, just. Well, when I was a child, I remember my dad watching it and the music used to scare me. I used to be,
Yeah, the music. Yeah.
Oh God, it still gives me the shivers. But I thought I'm gonna see what the hype was about. And now I'm like, I want to be a pilot so I can fly over that airbase and see what's there.
You want to fly over Area 51, you mean?
I don't think that's the episode I watched, but that would be on the list. Yeah, for sure.
Actually, it's been a while since anyone answered they wanted to be a pilot. It used to be the most common answer. It's been a long time. I forgot about that one. Question 9. What job would you definitely not like to attempt?
I'm happy to pretty much get my hands dirty wherever. There's not something I'd shy away from. I think one thing that I'm incredibly scared of is heights, though. So I probably wouldn't want to be somebody who, mans the skydiving post or, something like that, bungee jumping instructor. I think I'd faint.
The worst things I've seen with those, I mean, I'm not afraid of heights too badly, but there's a couple of TikToks. One was this skateboarder and he was skating on the arch of a suspension bridge. So, okay, you go, okay, it's at least 2 or 3 meters wide, but still, if you take a wrong turn, it's a very, very long way down. It was one of those Red Bull things, and I'm sure he had a safety cable on. But just looking at that was enough to be like, no, just turns your stomach. Pretty horrible.
I've seen a lot of GoPro footage of people. I'm not too sure. Is it parkour? I think it's called, where they just sort of jump over these, skyscraping buildings. And I just, if I was their mom, I would lock them in their room. So stop doing it.
That's not going to work with people who know parkour because they'd just be able to jump right out the window. You can't lock up someone who's good at parkour. I've seen some GoPro footage and it just kind of turns your stomach. But to each their own. Final question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
I would, rather than words, I'd really love to see my Nana. I think that would be just such an amazing event. And I really hope it does, I hope that there's something more than what we experience here. And I hope she's happy. I hope she's there with my granddad and I want to see them enjoying peace. So rather than hearing anything, I just want to see them.
Sounds lovely. Well, Sophie, that's about it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for yours. I sincerely appreciate this. It's lovely to come on and speak and just be normal. So it's been really lovely. Thank you.
Well, you can't turn Emma Jenkins down, can you? I would fear for my life. She would wrestle me and break one of my ribs. So I would need some self-defense classes. But Sophie, don't hang up with me just yet. I'm going to hang up with the audience, so stay around. But thank you to everyone for watching, whether it's live or on the replay, and we will speak to you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. Just a reminder to you entrepreneurial types to come and join us at our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/The Pageant Boss. I'll see you inside and see you in the next episode.